I see the market. I see why people would want to have that retro look, but with all the bells and whistle of a new Bronco. All right, today we're talking about my review of the Ford Bronco Heritage Limited 2 doors. Yes, finally, I'm driving the 2 doors version. I drove several versions of the 4 doors. The Wild Track, I drove base models. I drove the Raptor version and all that, but I never drove the 2 doors. So I thought it was quite interesting because the 2 doors is like the OG off-roader, the old school off-roader. So I was curious to see how it drives. And this one is the Heritage Limited Edition. It's quite expensive, but right before I give you all the price and all the bells and whistle inside of this Bronco, I just want to point out something about this Heritage Limited. There's 2 Heritage models, so there's one who's more expensive and the other one is decent, I could say. So I know the one I was driving was quite expensive, but keep in mind there's another model who's a little bit more affordable. So speaking of the price, today I'm talking about the 2 doors model. So the limited base model, limited heritage base model starts at $93,220 Canadian. If you're in the US, it's good for $69,685. If you're not choosing the limited model, in Canada, it starts at $65,000, and in the US, it starts around $48,000. So quite a difference between the Heritage and the Heritage Limited. So the model I was driving was around $95,000 Canadian, around $73,000 US. Under the hood, we can find a V6 2.7 liter EcoBoost matched to a 10-speed transmission. This is good for 330 horsepower and 415 foot-pounds of torque. Obviously, it's a Bronco. It's a 4x4. Performance-wise, 0 to 60 miles an hour, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. You can do it in 6.3 seconds. It's quite fast, I could say, because you got that really high differential ratio because it's built for off-roading. It get ups and go, you know, there's a good acceleration on this little truck, I could say, even if we're rolling on big 35 inches tires. Speaking of the ride on the road, it's quite comfortable for a true off-roader 2 doors. It's not as stable as the 4 door, I could say. It doesn't have the handling of the 4 doors. There's a big difference between those 2 models. But the 2 doors on the 35, I could say the ride is kind of bouncy, you know, right and left, forward and back. You're making a big sacrifice, obviously, on the handling and all that for off-road capacities, but still it rides better than a 2-door Jeep Wrangler from my point of view. Speaking of the Heritage Edition, before we're speaking of the design and all that, you know, at first I didn't quite understand the Heritage Edition because for me it was just like an overpriced Bronco with some retro feature on it. But after spending a full week with the Bronco 2-door Heritage, I kind of understand why they're making those models. Especially in the US, there's a lot of people who are really interested in those kind of models, retro Broncos, retro off-road trucks. Maybe you've seen Animal Kingdom with the Scout. They have like a retro mud Scout, you know, it's been like restored. These trucks are really cool, especially by the beach, you know, surfing and all that, putting the roof down all the time. But if you want to have that look, those trucks can get quite expensive, especially if you want to make it right and handle, you know, the right way, and, you know, not breaking down all the time. You can spend hundreds of $1,000s for those kind of trucks. So I see the market. I see why people would want to have that retro look, but with all the bells and whistle of a new Bronco. So it makes sense from my point of view, especially with the comeback of the new Scout and all that. So by choosing the Heritage, you've got that cool retro look, but you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a retro mud, or having something that's going to break down all the time, or you got to fix some rust and some issues. And, you know, those old Broncos or old Jeep or old Scout, they're not the best ride. And also handling wise and all that, it's just like, it's not on point. You don't get the comfort of modern trucks, I could say, but they're still cool. I really like them. But the thing is, you know, on a two-door Bronco, it makes sense. It looks, you know, vintage. It's okay on the four-door. I think the best way was really the one I was driving with the two doors, with the retro look and all that. But the one who's really, you know, it's a tough deal for me. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's the Bronco Sport Heritage. I don't like that. You know, I like the style of this Bronco Sport with the Heritage package. It doesn't look retro. It doesn't look good. From my point of view, they should leave the Bronco Sport alone. I like the Bronco Sport, but the Heritage packaging should stay only on the Bronco, from my point of view. Speaking of the exterior design, you get that retro look with the Heritage package, especially with the limited one. You've got limited choice of color. You've got like 2 blues and 1 yellow. Yellow, it's not my cup of tea. I could say that the light blue I had, you know, during my week was all right. So you've got that white grille in the front, white roof on the top. The wheels are also retro and also white. Everything makes sense, especially with those big tires, those big 35. Right now behind me, we can see the Bronco Sport with the Heritage. Not the best package, but if we go inside of the Bronco Heritage, you've got a good mix of a lot of, you know, retro look with all the white panels and all that. But you got that really cool brown. It's almost like a King Ranch brown, I could say, inside. It looks really good. If you don't choose the limited package, you get the cloth seats. Those look good for me. I think they're kind of blue and black and some gray. I think you know, for the price difference, it's not a big deal, you know, sacrificing the leather inside of the Heritage model, from my point of view, if you want to save some bucks on that side. But, you know, techno-wise, you got a huge screen. It works pretty well with the sync system. You've got awesome cameras in the front and the back. You've got all your buttons on the top to lock your front and back differential, disconnect your sway bar. You get your trail control. You get all the bells and whistle for off-roading, especially with the limited one. You've got the top suspension. You've got the biggest wheels and all that. You got also auxiliary switches to add on some lights, winches, anything you want to hook up to your Bronco. Speaking of the two doors, if we step in the back of the two doors, it's quite, you know, there's not a lot of place in the back. You know, choosing a two-door Bronco, from my point of view, it's a little like choosing a sport car, but this one, it's an off-road truck. You have to make some sacrifice. It's basically like choosing like a Mustang convertible, but the Bronco is a little bit more practical, because you're able to do some off-roading with it and maybe a little bit more cargo space, but the two doors is quite short. There's not a ton of space in the back, especially for adult. Even for kids, you know, me and my wife, we had a hard time to put the seat, or the baby seat, in the back. You know, those baby seats, because she's 3 years old now, so she's got the big one who can extend up to whatever years old. Like these days, I see kids like they're almost like 10 and they still have a baby seat. But that's another subject for another day. But we had a hard time to just go through and put the seat in the back for our kid. It's not really practical. So if you want to bring your kids, bring your friends, obviously the 4-door makes way much more sense. But this small wheelbase makes a lot of sense when you do some off-roading. Obviously, at low speed, the 2 doors, it's way superior than the 4-door. It's easier to move around inside of the trail, do U-turns. You've got way much more traction, I could say, especially if you go over bumps, kind of like a triangle bumps, you got less chance to get stuck because the wheelbase is so short. So that's a big plus. Obviously, really strong to go up the hills with that short wheelbase, those big tires and those locking differential and everything like that. It's an off-road machine, that's for sure, and it's tough to beat at low speed. But if you prefer to do high speed off-roading and you still want a Bronco, obviously the 4-door is more stable at higher speed, also on the road, handling wise and all that. And if you want to have more control, you can go and choose the Raptor model. And the Raptor model is built for high speed. This is because the Raptor is going to be wider, also a wider stance to handle those bumps at higher speed. So obviously the 2-door is king in the trail at low speed, higher speed. It's going to be a Raptor 4 doors. This is the reason why there's no Bronco Raptor 2 doors, because it wouldn't be stable at high speed in the desert, let's say. Okay, speaking of the fuel economy, obviously you get that really high gear to do some off-roading. So it's quite thirsty, even if it's a 2-door. So during my week, I was averaging 13.5 liters per 100 kilometers and 17 miles per gallon for my US friends. So it's quite thirsty, especially for the size. But what can you expect out of an off-roader with 35 inches with the aerodynamics of a box? That's something you can expect. Even if you got the EcoBoost and all that on their hood, it's just like, everything works against you for fuel economy wise. So that's some things you have to keep in mind. And also, by choosing the 2 doors, you have to make some sacrifice also on the towing capacity. The towing capacity, it's good for 3,500 pounds. So, quite a cool models for the Heritage. This is one of the trucks, the cars. I changed really my mind after spending a week with it. Without testing this truck, I was not really getting that retro look, and I'm a big fan of retro look. There's also another model coming up in 2025. It's called the Strope. It's an heritage for an old racing truck back in 1969, 1970, doing the Baja. It's red, white, and blue. You got a special interior, special plaque, special package, and all that. It looks cool. I really like when Ford goes and really search into their heritage like that. And there's not a lot of people knows exactly what is that Strobe. Maybe if you're down in Nevada and California and you like those Baja races and off-roading in the desert, but here in Canada those are not quite popular. But still, Ford is digging into their heritage to bring back those cool models. I really like that. If we compare the Bronco to the Mustang these days, they're going a new way with the dark horse and all that. From my point of view, I would prefer they're digging more into their heritage, and their Heritage is way much more popular than the Heritage of the Bronco. If we're thinking about the SVT Cobra, the Mach 1, whatever, Shelby's and all that, they have tons and tons of models, but instead they're trying to do something new with the Dark Horse. For me, it's not my cup of tea, but still, I really like what they're doing with the Bronco. I wish they could bring back the V8 5 liters into the Bronco, because back in the day, the Mustang was the sport car, the horse, you got two horse, you got the Mustang and you got the Bronco, and both were using the 5 liter. And I wish they could bring a spatial model with the 5 liter. There's some changes in the political field right now. Maybe it's going to be easier on the rules and the regulation and all that. Maybe Ford will be able to bring back the V8 inside of a Bronco, because, this is really what's been missing from my point of view inside of all those Broncos, especially the high-end one, especially the one who's almost touching $100,000 Canadian. I think it would make more sense, spending that amount of money, but at least having a V8 under the hood. Well, that's my opinion. Let me know in the comments which Bronco is your favorite. Which Bronco got the best value for the price? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. We're going to see each other on the next